Today, we're going to learn about the scientific method. The last couple of weeks, we've been talking about different parts of the scientific method, whether it be variables or hypotheses or claim evidence and reasoning. Today, we're going to take all of that and put it together. But before we can do that, we need to set up our notes. So turn to the next fresh, clean sheet of paper in your notebook, and at the top of the page, write scientific method. Measure 5 centimeters from the left red line and make a small mark. Using that mark, draw a line from the top to the bottom. Next, you're going to count down 3 lines and draw a line across the page. Then you'll count down 4 lines and draw a line. Then you'll count 5 more lines and draw a line, 8 lines down and draw a line across the page. And then finally, you're going to count down 6 lines and draw a line across the page. So what is the scientific method? Well, it's really an organized way that helps scientists answer a question or solve a problem. I like to think of it as a recipe or a formula to help us investigate the world around us. I really like recipes and formulas because they pretty much lay out exactly what we need to do. And the scientific method really is a simple method that scientists use as a framework to conduct an investigation. So the very first thing that we start with is a problem or a question. We're going to always ask a question based on our observations, and it's always in the form of a question. It should be specific, testable, measurable, and it really should be in the form of what is the effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable. Please pause the video and copy these notes into your composition notebook. So that brings us to our hypothesis. So we learned that a hypothesis is a statement that proposes an answer to a problem or the question asked. It predicts the results of our experiment, and it's usually based on research and observations. It's in the form of the if, then, because statement, and you need to make sure it has both your independent and dependent variable. Please pause the video and copy the notes into your composition notebook. Your experiment, now you're going to take your hypothesis and develop and design an experiment to test it. You're going to want to make sure you list all of the materials. You need to be specific. Provide step-by-step directions to conduct the experiment. It should be specific enough so that anyone can duplicate the experiment and get the same results. Include any safety procedures, and your experiment needs to have at least 5 trials. Please pause the video and copy the notes into your composition notebook. Now we're going to collect data. We're going to use that experiment that we designed and collect the data. You're going to record any observations, errors, measurements, and experimental results. You're going to collect both quantitative and qualitative data. So not only are you going to be measuring, but anytime you see an anomaly or something interesting of note, you're going to write that down. You're going to create a data table to record information. So your first column should be your independent variable. Make sure you include the unit. So meters, seconds, whatever. Dependent variable is here. You're going to make sure you have those 5 trials. I only put 3 because it would only fit on the slides. Then you have your average or your reduced data. Finally, make sure you have your title that explains what the data is. Please pause the video and copy the notes into your composition notebook. You need to analyze your data. So you're going to create a graph with the averaged or reduced data. You aren't going to put all of those individual data points from your trials. That's why we have the average data. That average data gives us a better way to look for trends or patterns. So when we have our graph, we're going to start looking for trends that support or reject our hypothesis. You also, when you analyze your data, you're then going to summarize the graph in paragraph form. You're going to write a statement that says the graph shows the effect of your independent variable on your dependent variable. You're going to tell me what the highs and lows were. So the fastest time, the slowest hurdle. Make sure you identify those two things. And finally, look for trends or patterns. We talked about this during graphs. So this is your positive, negative, or no trends. So what patterns are you seeing with your data? Please pause the video and copy the notes into your composition notebook. Your conclusion summarizes the results of the experiment. These are the following things that you have to have in a conclusion if we're doing a formal conclusion versus a claim evidence reasoning. You should restate your hypothesis, tell the audience if the data supports or rejects the hypothesis. If the data doesn't support it, then what are some other hypotheses you can test to explain your initial observations? Is there any reason to think there might be errors? And could those have affected your data? And additionally, what further research could you do? Or what could someone else do to verify the results? How could you redo this experiment to maybe support your hypothesis? Pause the video and copy the notes into your composition notebook. And then finally, the scientific method, even though we like to say that it's one and done, you follow these things and you're finished, that's not true. The final one is to try again. So if it doesn't support your data, you might want to go back and retry it. How can you test it to explain your initial observations? Change your experiment, test your new hypothesis. Scientists don't just, they support the hypothesis and that's it. They keep doing test after test to make sure that that data is true. The scientific method was actually developed by 3 men and many others, but in order to really kind of make science logical, right, to kind of put that recipe in place. So we have Francis Bacon, Rene Descartes, and Isaac Newton, and they all helped contribute to the development of the scientific method. It's a good way to learn about nature and a good way to learn about science. They wrote papers and discussed how using experiments and changing variables could help determine if a guess or a hypothesis was correct. Now you're going to go do an experiment all on your own.